I'm Riley.
And I'm Ronnie,
And this is the Plan to Eat podcast.
where we have conversations about meal planning, food, and wellness to help you answer the question, what's for dinner?
Hello, and welcome to the Plan to Eat podcast. Today, we are going to continue our book club on Grocery Shopping Secrets by Carol Ann Cates. And today, we're going to be discussing how to select and store fresh fruit, fresh vegetables, and herbs and spices. These chapters were chock full of helpful information about literally any vegetable you could possibly think of, how to store it, how to keep it fresh longer, and how to freeze it, which is so helpful for me and like everyone who listens to this podcast. You guys know we talk about freezing food all the time, and this gives you the specific details on how to do it.
Yes, it does. There was a lot of information in here. We are definitely not going to cover all of it. We'd probably have an 8-hour podcast episode if we tried to do
and
that.
You'd love every minute of it.
So we're probably going to go over just some high-level things, what Riley and I found interesting, what we learned, and some tidbits that we think y'all might find interesting as well. I will say that the sections on freezing and preserving both fruits and vegetables was really super helpful, even for somebody who I feel like I use the freezer all the time. It was like a little bit of a validation to be like, okay, you've been doing it right.
Yes, 100%. I thought the same thing. Or I've been doing that wrong, and I probably should make some adjustments.
True.
Let's jump in and talk about apples, because that is the very first thing she talks about. Quickly, there are 2,500 varieties of apples grown in the United States and more than 7,500 grown worldwide. Did that blow your mind?
That it really did. I mean, it did. But at the same time, I feel like apples are one of the fruits that I have heard the most about, I guess, as far as like there's lots of hybrid versions of apples. And we have this like old-timey neighbor, old-timey, whatever. He's an elderly man.
I like old-timey. That's cute.
And so the area that I lived in, the area that I live in used to be like all apple orchards.
Mhm.
I don't like in the 30s or something. And sorry, I just realized that like in a few years, we're not going to really be able to say in the 30s anymore because it'll be in the 30s.
Oh, bizarre. In the 1930s.
Yeah, I'll have to define in the 1930s. In the 1930s, our area was orchards, and I actually have an apple tree in my backyard. We've definitely talked about that on the podcast before. And the type of apples that grow on our tree are most similar, I think, to like a Jana Gold apple, which she mentions in here. But it's like the more heirloom version of that. Like the type of apple that grows on the trees around here, you can't find in the grocery store anymore because the hybrid versions have taken over, essentially.
Yeah.
So I've had conversations about apples, I guess.
With your old-timey neighbor?
Yeah.
There are actually a lot of wild apple trees. I guess, do you call them wild at this point if they used to be in an orchard?
I don't know. That's a good question.
But you can go down to the river over here by my house, and there's apple trees growing all along the edges of it, which is pretty fun. My kids love to go down there and pick apples.
Yeah, that's really cool. So Carol Ann notes here that there are 4 different categories of apples. You have eating apples, cooking apples, crab apples, and apples used for cider. So I thought this was interesting. I know I feel like I know the basics of this, whereas like people are like, oh, Granny Smith apples are the best apples to make a pie out of. And, Red Delicious are obviously snacking, eating apples. But I didn't realize that so many of them have been hybridized, I guess is the word, to be both, to be like multifunctional, right? Like, well, it's good enough that you could eat it, or you could put it into a pie or make jelly out of it. Like they're trying to make them really multi-purpose here so that we don't have to buy 4 different types of apples to do different things.
I thought it was interesting because I've never heard a breakdown. I just know there's apples that you like to eat and there's apples that you don't like to eat. But because they have a purpose, you want to put something a little bit less sweet into a pie because you're going to add so much sugar, that kind of thing.
Right.
A little more tart. Yeah.
Right.
What's your favorite kind of apple?
Okay, I highlighted my favorite apples because I thought that we would ask about this. I like the Pink Lady apples.
All right.
Those ones they're just so sweet, but also a little tart. I really love them. My husband loves a gala apple,
I like
however we
that.
say it.
So I really like Fuji and Honeycrisp apples. I
Mm,
like a really hard, sweet apple.
hmm
Like I don't like a soft apple.
No,
No,
me
thank you.
neither. No,
Yeah.
it doesn't mealiness in the apple. My dad loved Red Delicious apples. He ate a Red Delicious apple every day in his lunch. And it's my least favorite kind of apple because I think it's kind of mealy.
Yeah. I also really like Granny Smith apple
Yeah, I do too.
sometimes, just every
I do
once in
too.
a while. It's a very specific flavor. My husband and I were in Seattle when they released. I'm not exactly sure what the right term is. When they, I guess, released the Cosmic Crisp apple,
Oh,
which is definitely my top favorite apple
I don't
at
know if
this
I've ever
point.
had one.
Oh, you need to have one. They're
Okay.
so good. They have this like beautiful dark red skin with like freckles. Like I think they call them freckles, the little white spots.
hmm
But it looks like a galaxy, like a constellation on the skin. I think that's why they call it a cosmic crisp. But we were in Seattle when this apple launched, and it was such a big deal. Like I had no idea what a big deal it was when an apple was released to consumers. But it's because it takes 20 to 30 years for a new apple variety to make it to consumers. 20 to
Whoa.
30 years. Yeah. And so we just happened to be there this week in November visiting my parents, and it was all over the news. Everywhere you went in the farmer's market, there were people like cutting pieces for you to sample it. Like it was such a big deal. And so I think it is a very delicious apple. It's a cross between a Honeycrisp and an Enterprise apple.
Hmm.
And I do really love a Honeycrisp. So I already like thought I was gonna like it, but it is delicious. I don't know what else to say about it, but they're so good. Go try it. It launched in 19. It didn't launch in 19. It launched in 2019.
Oh, okay.
But we just happened to be there when it was like available. It
Do
was
they
crazy.
grow them in Washington State?
Yes.
Oh,
Yes.
okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
The breeding program for this apple started at Washington State University in 1997.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So they do a lot of apples over there in Washington State.
Very interesting. Wouldn't
Yep.
it be interesting to have that be like your graduate study? You're like at Washington State University and you're like, my graduate degree is in apple breeding.
The Cosmic Crisp variety. Yeah, it would be pretty wild. But I just went to my older brother's PhD graduation, and based on that graduate school graduation, people study some very specific, very smarty pants things
hmm
in the world. Like I was, I just felt like my mind was just exploding with like what people studied for their
Yeah.
PhDs. So it doesn't surprise me that somebody does this at Washington State for apples.
Yeah. They probably do for onions too, right? Because we might get to onions later, but because Walla Walla onions are so popular in Washington State.
Maybe they must do that too. I don't know. I didn't do as much research on the onion as I did the apple.
Yeah. Well, one last thing I wanted to mention about apples, because we don't need to spend our whole podcast talking about apples.
Though we could.
Well, we probably could. I noticed, so after reading this section, I was at the grocery store this week and saw that at our King Soopers, which is a Kroger brand grocery store, they have these new labels next to the apple prices that give you like a little bit of info about the apple, and then it gives you its flavor meter. So it's like leans either towards sweet or towards tart. And so I took a picture of it. I sent it to Riley and I was like, oh my gosh, this is really cool. I've never noticed this before. So like I took a picture of the Envy apple, and its little description is incredibly sweet and crunchy, firm and slow to brown when cut. So it's kind of cool that the grocery store is now helping you pick out what could be the apple that you actually want to eat or use for cooking or whatever, instead of having to like memorize all of the information that Carol Ann gave us here. Because it's great information, but definitely like I looked at this and was like, I'm only gonna be able to remember like two things about the apple when I'm actually in the grocery store.
For sure. And I also just gravitate towards the apples that I like. And so
Right.
having that information kind of available to you when you're shopping is helpful, because then maybe you can branch out. If you're like me and you just like what you like and you always buy that, it'll help you
Yeah.
branch out a little bit. So I just want to quickly stop on apricots. How do you
Okay.
say that? How do you say that word?
I say apricot. I don't say
Mm,
apricot. I say apricot.
yes. Well, I grew up saying apricot. And ever since it was pointed out to me that I say apricot, I have to laugh because like my husband's always like, "Oh, the monkey variety." Apricot. Though monkeys and apes are different, but apricot. So I have been working on my pronunciation of apricot because
Oh, wow.
but I didn't grow up eating many of them. So it was not a common thing to even really discuss at my house in the South. However, my in-laws live in Utah now, and they have an apricot tree in their yard. And they
Mm.
just last week mailed us about 4 or 5 pounds of apricots. It might be an exaggeration, maybe 3 to 4 pounds of apricots. And they were delicious. Unfortunately, I didn't read this section until after the
Oh.
apricots had reached the end of their life, but I wish I had put them in the refrigerator because that's what it said. Like that says it's the best way to store them. And we didn't do that. And so they went bad pretty quickly. But we did
Yeah.
get to eat a tremendous amount of it before they went bad.
That's really cool. I don't know if I've ever had a whole fresh one before. I feel like I've only ever had the dried kind.
Yeah. Same. Like if I ever had it growing up, it was a dried one.
Mm-hmm.
So they're very nice. They're kind of chewy,
Mm-hmm.
plum like.
Oh yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Some kind of cross between a chewy plum. They also have a pomegranate tree in their yard. They live in southern
Oh,
Utah.
cool.
It's like warm 90% of the year. So they have a lot of great growing season.
I love a pomegranate.
Yeah. They also mail us pomegranates when they're ready to, and that's pretty fun.
So I wanted to move on to just a little tidbit about grapefruit because
Okay.
I thought it was interesting. There are essentially two different kinds of grapefruit, and the climate that they're grown in is what determines how they're going to taste. And so there are some that are grown in Florida and some that are grown in Arizona. And it says the low humidity climate of Arizona will produce grapefruits with a thick peel, a blemish free skin, and more acidic flavor. Whereas grapefruits grown in a tropical climate like Florida will have a thin peel, slightly blemished skin. Wow, this is really hard for me right now. And a sweeter taste. So I just thought that was interesting because I don't think I've ever, when I've bought grapefruit at the store, I don't think I've ever looked at the origin. And even if I did, I wouldn't have known the difference.
Sure. Sure. Do you like grapefruit?
I do.
So do I. Love them.
Mm-hmm.
A couple of things that stood out to me. A lot of the things that I highlighted were how to choose, how to select the right fruit.
Mm-hmm.
And so a couple of those things I actually already did, but I wasn't sure if it was right. You know how you hear things in your life about how to select the right watermelon or how to select the right fill in the blank, the right avocado, whatever. And then over time you meet somebody and they're like, "Oh, no, no, no. This is how you select the right
Yeah.
one." And so then your mind is full of all these like options for like how to select the best one.
Mm-hmm.
But some of them are in conflict with one another.
Yeah.
Like you want the watermelon to have the largest, widest flat spot. It sat there the longest. Or no, you want to knock it and it sound hollow. Or no, you don't want it to be yellow. You want it to be green all the way around. Like so many different ways that people do it. So I feel like just having this book say, this is the best way, period, is kind of nice. But it also validates me because
Yeah.
some of the ways I select fruit is actually accurate. So a couple of those ripe clementines will have a lovely aroma. Like they will smell like they are ripe.
Mm-hmm.
And I know some people hesitate to get ones that smell because they think that they're overripe or like they're going to go bad fast. So pineapples, I smell the bottoms of the
Mm-hmm.
pineapple to see if they smell like pineapple. And I also pull the leaves. And if the leaves come out easy, then it's a ripe one. That's how I select pineapple. And that is how Carol Ann suggests that we select a pineapple at the grocery store. So I felt very excited about that.
Yeah, I agree. It is really nice to have like a single source of truth, I guess is what I would call it.
Yeah.
Because it does feel almost like folklore of like, here's how you
Totally.
select the best watermelon. And you, like you said, you've heard like 7 different things and you're like knocking on it and shaking it around and like cradling it like a baby, you know? So yeah, it is really nice to be like, have the information. And like you said, have it just like, here's how you do it, period. Let's move on to the next one.
Yes. And just as a reminder, she is an expert at produce and an
Yeah.
expert at the grocery store. So
yeah,
we're gonna trust her and go with her guidance. So cantaloupes, when they're ripe, they'll emit a slight cantaloupe fragrance, and they'll also yield the slight pressure on the blossom end, which is the end opposite of the stem.
Mhm.
I chose a cantaloupe yesterday at the grocery store based on this. And P.S. It is cantaloupe. It is melon season. I was at a grocery store in town yesterday, and the kinds that are available right now, like I wanted to buy every single one. They're beautiful. There's this like one that looks, it's called a Picasso melon, and it has like
Mm.
got like these like beautiful like splatter paint outs. I don't know. It's beautiful. Apparently, like I like the Cosmic Crisp. It's got the freckles. I like the It's my art degree kicking in.
Yeah.
Okay, but I picked my cantaloupe based on this, and it is so good. So good. So good.
I love it. It's amazing. Like, it's like empowering to be like, I know how to do this now.
Well, and it's not a guessing game. It's
Yeah.
not just like, oh, I'm gonna grab this and hope for the best.
Mm-hmm.
So how Carol Ann suggests you pick a watermelon. It says her father taught me to thump, sorry. My father taught me to thump a watermelon with my knuckle. If it sounds hollow, it's ripe. Characteristics to look for are symmetrical, dull colored body with a slightly flat, yellowish, almost butter colored underbelly. If it's white, the watermelon will be underripe. And if it's bright yellow, it'll be overripe. There you go. That's
Okay.
it. That's the rules.
I like it. This reminds me that when I was reading this, I was thinking about how when we talked about eating seasonally for summer, you did a breakdown of how to pick a watermelon in that episode. And I remember we had like a little phrase that was like heavy, hollow, and something. And so
Heavy, hollow, and flat.
maybe
Maybe
something like that. But I just I highlighted the words heavy and hollow to be like, Riley already talked about this. She was already telling us the truth over here.
I hope that what I said in that podcast doesn't conflict, because I'm just going to go with what she says now. This is my new rules.
One thing that I thought was interesting, just kind of as an overall, is that there are some fruits in particular that are meant to be ripened when you take them home. They're picked and then they're brought to the grocery store, and they're probably not ripe when you get them at the grocery store. Like she has mangoes as an option for one of those. Is that like the mangoes at the grocery store are often not ready to be eaten yet, and you need to ripen them at home. So I really liked that because I feel like I've bought mangoes before that were like ripe at the grocery store. And then by the time I ate them, which was probably a couple days later, like they were a little too ripe, too mushy, almost like fermented, you know?
Mm-hmm.
And so this was really nice to know, like, oh, it's okay to just buy the hard ones because I can figure out how to ripen them at home instead.
Yeah, I found that to be a really helpful piece in this section for this, just the how to ripen it at home, like avocados, how to ripen them at home, what to do to get you to the point where you want to eat them instead of just being bummed out that they were terrible. Or what happens to me sometimes is that then they get overripe because they weren't ripe, and then suddenly they're overripe. There's like a sweet spot.
It really is. And with an avocado, it's like 5 minutes.
Or 5 business days.
Okay, so I wanted to move on to peaches and nectarines because peaches, I think, are the hardest thing for me to pick out at the grocery store. So I don't know if anybody else feels this way, but it feels really challenging to me. I did want to mention a thing that I learned is that there are different varieties of peaches. There's clingstone, freestone, and then semi-freestone. And the clingstone have a flesh that's firmly attached to the pit on the inside. And they're a little bit sweeter and juicier than the freestones. The freestone, it's exactly what the name says, is that like the skin is more separated from the pit on the inside. So if you were making like a peach pie or a cobbler or something, that would be an easier variety to choose, is a freestone variety, because then when you cut it open, the pit comes out way easier.
From the flesh, not the skin.
Oh, yeah. Sorry.
From the fruit. Yeah.
From the inside flesh. Yeah. Not the skin. You're right. One of the things that she said is that when you're choosing peaches, they should have a well-defined crease, which I thought was interesting because I have never thought about that. I didn't even know to think about that. And a sweet fragrance, and be soft to the touch, but not mushy. You don't want to buy ones that have what she calls green shoulders because they're too premature. And you obviously don't want ones that have like bruises or flat spots on them.
I agree with you that picking peaches is very difficult. I feel like I'm just hoping for the best with that every time.
Yeah, I know.
Yes.
Because when you get the perfectly ripe peach, it is such a beautiful experience. It is like what I wait for every like August, is to
Yeah.
just get that peach that is just like juice running down your chin and it's so flavorful. That's like my favorite food of all time, I
Yes.
think.
Yeah. Well, you know how there's that phrase like lucky to live Hawaii? Have you heard that?
Oh yeah, yeah.
I feel like I was about to say like we're lucky to live in Colorado, but there's also Georgia peaches with
That's
the
true.
same. So there's if you live close to these peaches, there's not a lot of things that are better.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
agree.
We have a bag of frozen ones in our freezer from last summer because I couldn't let them go bad because they were just too good. And every time my daughter sees them, she's like, "Mom, we've got to eat these." I'm like, we will. We're gonna make peach ice cream. Don't worry, we're getting there.
Ooh, yum.
But yeah, I love a good peach, and I'm so glad to know how to choose them now because when you go to the farm stands here when the peaches are ripe at the end of the summer, yeah, I just don't want to wing it. I just want to get the good ones. I don't,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, and they can be really expensive. So it stinks when you spend, a bunch of money and then they're all kind of lackluster.
Yes. Yeah. Because they are expensive. But while we're on the topic of peaches, if you want to ripen your peaches at home, you can place them in a cool place with their stem end down. And
Yeah,
then if they give slightly when pressed and become more fragrant, they're ready to eat. So it's a tip.
good tip. So I just have you mentioned pomegranate tree
Yeah.
earlier. I just wanted to mention something I thought was super interesting about pomegranates and how to tell if they're ripe. And she has these phrases of like, shop with your eyes, shop with your ears, shop with your
Mhm.
nose, which is really cute. And so she says with pomegranates, you should shop with your ears because if you tap the fruit, it should make a metallic sound, which I was like, I'm not going to be able to try that until like November, but I'm really interested
Right.
to try it.
Yeah, just hold that in your mind for later. So I don't know if you have any other tips that you want to go through, but just to give you an idea of what we're working with this book, plums, pomelo, pomegranates, raspberries, starfruit, strawberries, tangelos, tangerines, like it goes on and on and on. Like if there is a fruit that you love, it's going to be in this book.
Yeah.
And if you want tips about how to select it, um, yeah, go run and buy this book.
I would say in general, if you go to the grocery store and you feel really lost in the produce section, as far as like, you have your grocery list, you know what things you're supposed to buy, but you really struggle to pick out specific produce, you definitely need this book. And
Yes.
it's going to give you a lot of information. I'm like tempted to bring it to the grocery store with me the next time I go.
That's the method I took was, okay, I'm gonna go buy a cantaloupe. And I like logged away the how do I pick it? And I went in and I looked at all of them. I did the things I was supposed to do and got the one. But you're right, like there's so now I just want to go buy everything and just try all of
Yeah.
her methods.
Hmm.
As someone who does grocery pickup pretty often, this book has made me want to stop doing that
Mm.
because I just want to go look at everything and
Yeah.
just pick based on how to actually select correct produce. And I know that that's a big reason why people don't do grocery pickup or grocery delivery because it was selected for you. And I think there's a season for everything. And a lot of the time, the season that I'm in is grocery pickup. But yeah, this makes me want to go in and just to shop for the produce.
Yeah. Well,
Yeah.
maybe when your kids are a little bit older, then it's like a learning experience for them where you're like,
Yeah.
look, here are the things we're looking for with this
Hmm.
watermelon. Help me find one.
Yes, I've definitely made my kids sniff the bottoms of pineapples. That sounds terrible. But I also feel like a crazy person when I do that in the grocery store because you pick them up
Yeah.
you pick them up and you sniff the bottom, and then you put it back down, pull on the leaves, and I'll pick up 15 before I buy one. And yeah, it can feel a little ridiculous, but the payoff's worth it.
Yeah, I agree. So she says that most fruits can be frozen, but their texture might vary once you take them out of the freezer. So that's always something to consider when you're freezing fruits or vegetables is that the texture is most likely not going to be the same when it comes out of the freezer. They could get mushier when they're thawed. A lot of fruit is just better to, have in like a smoothie or, I mean, I freeze a lot of things and then I use it in like a cobbler or something
Yeah.
later in the season. So she gives literally all of the fruits that she talks about. She also then lists exactly how you should prepare them to put them into the freezer. So another extensive list of information. She talks about two different ways to freeze, which I thought was really interesting. I actually hadn't heard about the second way of freezing. It's definitely not a method I've ever used. But the first one is dry pack, which is where you like wash and prep all of your fruit, and then you put them, you dry them, and you put them in like in a single layer on a sheet pan, and then you put it in the freezer until everything is hard and frozen, and then you transfer it into whatever container you're going to freeze it in. So that way everything's not just like stuck together in a 1 pound clump of strawberries, you know?
Literally where my mind went to the many times I have just tossed the strawberries in the freezer, cleaned, but just tossed them in because I thought these are going bad. Just put them in the freezer.
Yeah.
And then, 1 pound block of strawberries makes a great pie, but doesn't do a lot of other things.
No.
You can chisel them apart for a smoothie.
Yeah. So the other method is called a syrup pack. And so you basically make a simple syrup with sugar and water, and then you put that liquid around your fruit and freeze it that way. And I did a little bit of Googling to figure out why you would choose that method. And the general internet told me that it helps retain the moisture of your fruit. It prevents browning. And just in general, it preserves the flavor and the color and the shape of the fruit that you're freezing. And in general, this would be a good option, particularly if you're planning on using something for a dessert, since then it already has extra sugar in the mixture.
So just to give you a general idea of how she suggests to freeze things, mostly it's peel, remove the seed, slice, freeze. There are a few things she suggests freezing: whole grapes, but remove the stems, cranberries, raspberries. Obviously, you don't really need to do much to a raspberry. So she gives you really great suggestions. Kumquats, she thinks that are best in syrup, the syrup method, but mostly freeze. I was actually really glad to read this section because, like the peaches I was mentioning, like those are sliced, pitted, and frozen.
Yeah.
Now they are in a 1 pound block, so I should have done it differently. But yeah, mostly it's just helpful tips, and it's really helpful if you use a lot of your own fruit for smoothies instead of buying pre-frozen fruit. This is a really helpful section, and also just like it helps you prevent waste when you just freeze it, because even if like those peaches, like I haven't used them since August. It's time to use them, but I didn't want to throw them away.
Right.
Yeah, we couldn't have eaten them either. We had kind of peached ourselves out. Like we were maxed on the peaches, but just it's really helpful, prevents waste, helps you use it in the future. And also kind of a lot of the time it helps you have fresh fruit in the winter if you aren't someone who does much canning.
Right.
Which I'm not sure anyone does much canning these days.
I mean, unless it's like unless you really have a goal to do it, I don't think that canning's not a super casual thing. You know, it does take some effort. So I think like when we have a year where we have apples on our tree, like I can a bunch of applesauce and apple butter.
Yes.
But that's because we will literally, one tree gives us thousands of apples. And so like you just have to set aside a weekend and be like, we're just making it and we're canning it, we're putting it away. But like we also have a huge strawberry patch in our backyard, and I just freeze the strawberries because getting enough strawberries at one time to then make strawberry jam, it's like a little too much because they're not all ripe at the same time. It's like every 3 days we get another batch of strawberries. So
yeah, I'm just kind of laughing to myself because your yard is like prolific with strawberries and apples. Like it doesn't do those halfway.
I know. It's so true.
Full send.
And we just bought some raspberry plants, so get ready for some mixed berry jam up in here.
Awesome. Love it. I love to be your yard's friend.
Yeah. One thing that I wanted to mention that she actually says this in freezing vegetables, but it applies to fruit as well. So I just want to throw it out there, is that she reminds us to think about how you'll use the produce once it's thawed. And like you should basically just prepare it like that before you freeze it. So if your peaches are a great example, like you wouldn't necessarily freeze your whole peach because then when it thaws, then you have to go through the process of preparing it to go in your cobbler or your ice cream or whatever. Whereas if you just already go through the process of like cutting it into the slices that you'll use it in later, it's like a time saving thing. And then, like for vegetables, obviously, like you wouldn't necessarily freeze a whole carrot because then you have to slice up a kind of mushy carrot once it thaws.
Yeah, that's a good segue. I was actually really surprised that she said to do that.
Yeah.
In particular, like peel it, prepare it how you're going to use it. Now, it does make sense because like the frozen steam bags of vegetables are prepared this way, right? Like you never go
Yeah.
to the freezer section and find like whole frozen carrots.
No.
So I guess like it makes sense, but I do not freeze a lot of vegetables. And
Yeah.
so it's just not something I've had a lot of practice in to think through like how do I need to freeze this to use it later?
Hmm.
And so I thought that was really helpful information. It does make so much sense though.
Yeah. Yeah. I freeze like tomatoes. Last year we had tomatillo plants and we had
Oh yeah.
tons of tomatillos. So I froze tomatillos. But I mean, whatever. We're just going to dig right in. Because she recommends freezing tomatillos. You can just freeze them whole. Whereas I like, what's the word? I like broiled mine in the oven before I
Oh yeah.
did first. So they were kind of like uh charred before
Hmm.
I put them in. And that's because I knew I was probably going to make like salsa or like an enchilada sauce or something with them. And I like the flavor of that. So I guess I was also doing the thing that she recommended, which was preparing them the way that I wanted them before I froze them.
Hmm.
But
Yeah, I imagine might be strange to broil them after they've been
afterwards,
frozen. So I think you probably would. It made smart sense.
smart sense. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Before we go into specific vegetables, though, she talks about fruits versus veggies and why there are so many fruits that are considered vegetables. Technically wise, they are fruits. And so I just want to read her thing here to clear this up, to clear the air a little bit. From a culinary standpoint, foods that are sweet or sour are considered fruits, while foods with a mild savory flavor are vegetables. Technically, the avocado, tomato, cucumber, pepper, eggplant, olive, pumpkin, peas, zucchini, other squash, okra, and beans are fruits. They are classified as vegetables because of their flavor profile and how they're used in the kitchen. So I really liked this definition for it because I think everybody has come across the person who's like, an avocado is actually a fruit, right?
Yes, we all have come across that person. I feel like that information gets thrown around when somebody just like it feel like a dad joke. Kind of
Yeah.
like, did you know? Did you know?
So true.
Uh yes, I love that. I actually found this to be very interesting information. So I'm going to back up just a bit and read the paragraph ahead. Botanically, fruits come from the flower of the plant
Hmm.
and contain seeds or pits. And if the plant produces any other edible part like root, leaves, stems, bulbs, those are considered vegetables. I definitely didn't know that pumpkin, zucchini, squash, okra, and beans are fruits. Or like technically
Yeah.
fruits. I didn't know that.
I think I knew it technically because I knew about the seeds part of
Yeah.
it. I don't think I really made the like light bulb connection.
Hmm. Like pumpkin puree is fruit soup.
Wow, that's so true.
Yeah, but like I know you don't. I mean, they are. We eat them as vegetables,
Yeah.
classified as vegetables. But
Yeah. That's
it's
funny.
just interesting information.
Hmm. I guess
It's
also
like
then like gazpacho, like a tomato soup is also a fruit soup.
yeah. It's a kind of information that like it's like a party trick. Like, well, did you know it comes from the flower of the plant?
Okay. One of the A's that I want to talk about is asparagus. So for each of the fruits and vegetables, I don't think we said this earlier. She gives like a rundown of potentially different varieties, maybe like a interesting fact about that piece of produce, and then she gives you tips on selecting in the grocery store, storing, and she tells you the availability of that in the United States. I think is where her availability is usually located. And then in some of them, she has like little tips for like, here's how I would prep this, little known facts maybe about how to prepare things. And so in her tips for preparing asparagus, she says that she uses a vegetable peeler to remove the rough outer flesh on the lower part of asparagus, which I thought was really interesting because I just snap off the bottoms of my asparagus. Like that's how my mom taught me to prepare asparagus. So it's just always how I've done it is like the woody part at the bottom. I just snap it off and then I cook the rest of it. Maybe I'm doing it the lazy way.
I always bend it and like where it breaks.
Yeah, that's what my mom
Yes,
told
yeah,
me was like
yeah,
where it breaks is that's the part you shouldn't eat is like you don't want the part that breaks off.
yeah. Like it's too difficult to eat that part.
Yeah, yeah, because it's too woody. So that's interesting.
Yeah, I thought that was really interesting too. Earlier, we touched on avocados, but they are listed in the vegetable section because technically they're a vegetable. We eat them as a vegetable because of the flavor profile, like we talked about just a few minutes ago. So, but we talked about how either 5 minutes or 5 business days is how long it takes to ripen them. So, to speed up the ripening process, place them in a paper bag with an apple.
Hmm.
So, that's the way. Um, as far as selecting goes, I feel like this is one that is a really hard one in the grocery store sometimes. So, I'm going to mention how she suggests to select them. If you want to use it immediately, one that gives to gentle pressure when you squeeze it. If you're shopping ahead, pick one that's just firm to the touch. Don't get any that are bright green or rock hard. They're very difficult to ripen. Okay, that's it.
The more you know. One thing that I thought was interesting that for pretty much every single vegetable that she has listed here, the storing instructions basically include to store it in a bag. Whether
Yes.
it's on your counter, in your refrigerator, she says basically everything should be stored inside of a bag. She says in a reusable paper or plastic bag. Sometimes she says a perforated bag. And the perforated bag is for the ethylene gases that
Yes.
some fruits and vegetables give off, which I think the ethylene gas can cause the thing. If you trap the ethylene gas, it causes it to ripen too fast. But then there's also some produce like apples and bananas are good examples of this that give off a lot of ethylene gas. And so they can ripen other things around them faster, just like they do with the avocado. So this was really interesting.
It's fascinating.
I don't store anything in a bag unless it's like the carrots that come in the
Yes.
bag.
Yeah, I found this to be very interesting information. And also, I've got to kind of rethink the way that I store my fruits and vegetables if this is the better way. Because, well, I do keep my fruits and vegetables separate. They're not in the same place in my fridge.
Yeah, I do too.
It's fascinating, like, why a refrigerator would even have a fruit and vegetable like separate drawers for those things. Sometimes they're together.
My drawers have like a little slider at the
Yes.
top with like air holes for the fruit, and then the vegetables is no air
Yes, and this
hole.
is why. Yeah.
So it's like the fruit can like breathe and the vegetables are not
No
supposed
air.
to
No
breathe,
breath.
basically. No
Um,
breathing.
so carrots in particular will turn bitter if they're exposed to that ethylene gas. And so,
Yeah,
I mean, it's the more you know. The more you know. I
it
mean,
really is. It's like all these little tidbits similar to salt,
yes.
fat, acid, heat, where it's just like it's the little things that can actually make a dramatic
Yeah, and
improvement.
I mean, I feel a little uneducated, like, as we read this book, because 'cause I'm like,
Right.
"How did I not know that that's why you kept your fruits and vegetables separate?" But, you know, nobody taught me that that's why you keep them separate. So just, like, the why the fridge even has that little slider or why you have 2 separate drawers and why it's important to, like, follow that, you know? It's not just, like, because the refrigerator company is like, "Oh, we're cute, and we've got a vegetable drawer and a fruit drawer," you know? But if your
Right.
carrots turn bitter and then you cook them and then the recipe that you made with them is gross because your carrots were bad, if you just don't do that one thing, then your carrots will continue to have their sweet, delicious flavor instead of tasting bitter, and then your recipe will be better. It ultimately all roads lead to being a better cook.
Speaking of things that you don't want to store together, she says, do not store onions and potatoes together because potatoes give off a lot of moisture and it can cause your onions to go bad
Mm.
faster. So that's interesting because I think a lot of people, well, this is probably ancestral kind of a knowledge of like people who used to use food cellars
Yeah.
and stuff because like root vegetables, like both potatoes and onions, they're very hardy. And so you could keep them in like a cool vegetable cellar. But I bet people knew like you don't keep them in the same
Yeah,
corner,
yeah.
right? You put the potatoes over here and the onions go over here because when we put them next to each other, they go bad.
This is another one of those sections where every single vegetable you could ever think of, potentially anywhere in the world, is listed in this section. The only thing she says that she doesn't have much experience with is wasabi root and one other. I just have to go find it.
It's like
Yeah,
orach.
because she just couldn't find them in her area. So if there's a
Yeah.
vegetable that you eat, it is listed here.
Yeah. So she goes through all the different types of
Mm.
peppers. She goes through both a whole list of hot peppers and sweet peppers. I wanted to mention on the hot peppers. I don't know about any other pepper other than jalapeno as far as this is concerned, but I found an article on all recipes. I actually found this article a long time ago because I was like, why do sometimes I get jalapenos and they're so spicy, and other times get jalapenos and they're not spicy at all? Because sometimes you want a spicy jalapeno for whatever you're making, and then other times you're like, this is too much because this recipe calls for like 3 jalapenos, and if they're all super hot, we're gonna be dying. So here's my tidbit about how to pick for spiciness on a jalapeno. The easiest way to tell if the peppers in your grocery store are from younger or mature plants is to look for the telltale stretch marks. The more white lines and marks you see, the hotter the pepper will likely be. The smoother and shinier the pepper, the younger and therefore milder it will likely taste. So basically, if you go into the grocery store and look at jalapenos, you'll see some of them
Mhm.
have these like vertical lines on them. And like she said, they kind of look like stretch marks. And then if you're wanting spicy, go for those ones because those are more mature, and the maturity of the pepper determines how hot it's going to be, at least as far as a jalapeno is concerned. And if you want a younger, delicate, very immature, very mild and sweet jalapeno, go for the ones that are shiny and don't have any stretch marks on them.
That's super, super helpful information. I found the whole Scoville scale to be interesting, which is
Yeah.
in the US, the hotness of a pepper is rated on a Scoville scale, which can go from 0 up to like 200 to 350,000. So
Mm-hmm.
things.
I think over 1 million, actually. One of the ones in here she said was like a
Which one is
million.
that?
The ghost
Oh yeah.
pepper. It ranges from 800,000 to over 1 million.
Okay, yeah. So I had an incorrect cap.
Oh, the Carolina Reaper, actually, which is the cross between the ghost pepper and the red habanero, hottest Guinness Book of World Records, hottest pepper. It ranks 1.6 million to 2.2 million in the Scoville scale.
Yeah, yikes.
Have you ever watched the YouTube channel Hot Ones? That's what this made me think of, because they do their hot sauce based off of Scoville.
I haven't watched that, but my husband's a fireman, and they often will try to find the hottest hot sauce and put it on everything. Or like guys will
Yeah.
bring in like the world's hottest chocolate, and it's got like ghost pepper in it or Carolina Reaper in it, and then they like
Mhm.
all taste it for fun. Now I think I have a pretty high tolerance for hot peppers. I do really like them. I like my peppers to be spicy. But I know a lot of people can't handle it. So it lists every single pepper and it tells you where it lands. So if you like the flavor of peppers, but you just have kind of no idea which one is going to be the one for you or which one's not the one for you, this helps because it gives the Scoville scale for every single pepper.
Yeah. Or if you have a recipe that calls for a serrano pepper and you don't know that a serrano pepper is technically hotter than a jalapeno pepper, right? Like it's an area where you could make a
Yeah.
substitution. If you don't like a lot of spice, you could be like, okay, well, I'll look for I'll get a jalapeno instead because they're similar size, similar texture. So like an area for
Yeah.
substitution, I
Yeah,
think.
absolutely.
Okay, and then she moves on to bell peppers. So sweet bell peppers, which are not on the Scoville scale because they're just sweet. And this blew my mind. Okay, the number of lobes on a bell pepper determines what you should buy it for. Okay, right? Like they have, I don't know what else to call them other than lobes, right? Like they have what do we call them on peaches? Indentation?
The fold.
A
Oh,
crease.
shoot.
I was thinking of the word
Okay.
crease. Yeah. So, they have like the creases in them, which define the different lobes of the bell pepper. And she says bell peppers that have 4 or more are better for eating raw, and peppers that have 3 are better for roasting, sauteing, and grilling. So I'm guessing the more lobes it has, probably the sweeter it is. She doesn't define that specifically, but that's kind of what I would infer from this. Who the heck ever knew to count the number of lobes on a bell pepper? I did not. I was this many days old when I learned this. Oh, is that
The phrase
the
is I
phrase?
was
I
today
said the
years.
phrase wrong.
Okay, I gotta get it together.
All right, we've recovered. Okay, so the last vegetable that I wanted to talk about is zucchini and summer squash, because if you've ever planted a zucchini plant, you know that one plant is too many. Because like one plant gives you like 7 zucchini every day. And there's like this joke. So My extended family is from Kansas. There's like this joke, it's probably in other places too, but I know it from my family from Kansas that they're like, once July comes around, don't park your car and leave the windows down because people will just be putting zucchini in your front seat.
I've literally never heard that. I've been given a lot of zucchini, but I've never heard.
It's probably like a more specific phrase, but clearly I'm not good at phrases today. But yeah, so like the idea is that just like when you plant zucchini in your garden, you get overwhelmed with zucchini, right? Like this is why we have to figure out how to make zucchini bread and muffins and all of the things. People are trying to be like, here's a chocolate cake that has zucchini in it and you don't even know. I just wanted to give some ideas for how you could use your zucchini. So you could obviously boil or steam it. That sounds kind of boring to me. I'm not going to lie. You can roast your zucchini, saute your zucchini, grill it. You can bake it into sweet treats. You can make casserole. You can put it in casseroles. You can make zucchini noodles. So those are just some ideas if you're looking to use up your zucchini this year. My husband dislikes zucchini, so I didn't plant any
Wow.
this year. Okay, that's a lie. I planted a zucchini plant and then something ate it when it was like an inch tall. And my husband said, thank goodness, I hate zucchini and I don't want to eat any of it this year. So we're not having zucchini this year. I bought some other stuff instead.
I'm racking my brain over here because my daughter like loves zucchini bread, but she always calls it the wrong vegetable. So she'll like, I can't think of what it is, like carrot bread or cucumber bread. I don't remember, but I wish I could think of it because it's the way she will consume it.
Oh yeah.
Now granted, I don't know that you can call it a zucchini or a vegetable after it gets baked with chocolate in the oven. Just like a carrot cake is no longer a vegetable, but I always like, I'll at least roast or like pan fry, saute some of the zucchini that I'm given every year. And then usually I'll make at least one zucchini chocolate cake.
Yeah. I love zucchini. Honestly, my favorite way, this is the way that my mom made it growing up, which is just sauteing it in a pan with butter and then put Chinese five spice on it. It's so good. Like the like warm flavors of the Chinese five spice is just so good with the zucchini.
I like to do it with butter, onions, and Greek seasoning. Yeah.
Ooh, yeah.
But you gotta fry it like long enough so that it gets a little bit like soft but crispy.
I tried to make zucchini fries one time. Granted, this was before I had an air fryer. It was way too much work. Way too much work for like mediocre fries.
Yeah. Quick note on zoodles or like zucchini noodles. They have a pretty high moisture content. And so making sure you dry them just like you would dry it before you made bread. Like you know, you're gonna like grate it on your grater or you're gonna zoodle it with your zoodler. You just wanna like make sure that you like absorb a lot of that water. Or your sauce that you're putting it with, it'll just be very watery.
I think the best tip that I have for that is to, once you have grated it or turned it into noodles, sprinkle salt on it, let it sit, like put it on paper towels or like a cheesecloth or something and let it sit for like 10, 15 minutes with the salt on it. And then the salt helps bring out more of the moisture. And then you can like squeeze it and get a lot of that moisture out.
I usually always do the squeeze. And it's shocking how much water is in a zucchini. Because when you cut it, you don't necessarily see that. You know, it doesn't, But when the longer it sits, it just, amazing. So for freezing vegetables, you can do this in multiple ways. But like Ronnie already mentioned, preparing your vegetable the way you're going to want to eat it is the first step. She also suggests blanching most vegetables before freezing them, which is an added step. But again, you're not wasting it and you know you're going to use it later. And I always love when my past self did so much work for me, but it does help preserve the vegetable better in the freezer.
Yeah, that was something that I don't do. That this is the thing that I learned from this book. I don't normally blanch vegetables unless it's like I'll blanch my tomatoes to get the skin off of them before I freeze them. But I never would have thought to do that for other vegetables, really.
I thought it was pretty helpful information too.
Yeah. Yeah. So then she goes through all sorts of the timing that you would use for blanching different things. Like she doesn't skimp on information.
No, not at all. And just like we mentioned that every vegetable is listed and every fruit is listed, she also goes back through every single vegetable and how to freeze it. And so specifically, I'm
Yeah.
like looking at asparagus, remove the woody ends, cut them into spears, blanch them if they're thin for 2 minutes, medium for 3 minutes, large for 4 minutes, like the most specific. This is a kitchen handbook.
Yeah. Yeah. It really is. So then she does have some vegetables that don't require blanching. One of them is avocados. So you can freeze avocados. If you weren't freezing your avocados already, now you know you could freeze them. So when they have gone ripe after 5 minutes or 5 business days, you can freeze them, and you can freeze them whole, in halves, sliced, or mashed. But again, she mentioned that it's going to alter the texture. So it's best to be like, use them in a guacamole or something afterwards. You're not going to just put them on your avocado toast,
Yeah.
probably.
I also found it very interesting that she would freeze a cucumber.
Thought that was interesting too.
But she says you can do that. Peel it or leave the peel on, slice it, place them on a baking sheet lined with parchment, and freeze until firm. Fascinating.
I was trying to figure out how you would use it after the fact, because the texture's definitely going to be different when they
Yes.
come out because they have so much
Yeah,
water.
she definitely says don't freeze lettuces. I think there's a whole list of things not to freeze. Let me find that really quick. Squirrel, lettuce, microgreens, radicchio, sprouts, and watercress. And I would have put cucumber here.
Yeah, me
I
too.
do think though that like if you're a person who juices, that potentially, or I mean honestly, like I've put cucumber in a smoothie before, and it does give it like a
Oh, for sure.
brightness and like a
Yeah.
freshness to it. So I could see using it in a smoothie, though I would never have thought to freeze it.
No, me
Yeah.
neither. But I do like this. I did plant a lot of cucumbers this year. And so this is nice to know that I could freeze them, because like usually what I'll do, once our strawberries are popping off and our kale is popping off, like I'll freeze things in individual like smoothie
Yeah.
packs together. And so it's nice to know like, oh yeah, I could put a cucumber in there
Yeah.
too as part of
Yep,
the smoothie.
absolutely. It's perfect.
All right, so final section of today's podcast is much shorter. This is herbs and spices. And one thing to note is that the dried herbs, also known as spices, are a more concentrated flavor than the fresh version, which makes sense, right? Because like if you're looking at the density of something, like what 1 tablespoon of something that's dried is like a lot more dense than 1 tablespoon of something that's just like diced or chopped up. But that's something to consider if you're like, well, I don't have time to chop up like 5 cloves of garlic. This happens to me all the time. And I'm like, I'm just going to put in powdered garlic instead and it'll be fine. And so it's just good to realize like, okay, so if it calls for a specific number of cloves of garlic, you don't necessarily want to be like, well, that's probably like a whole tablespoon of garlic. Like you will be keeping the vampires away at that point.
Though I typically measure garlic with my heart.
But fresh garlic, I think, is different than garlic
Yes.
powder.
Yeah.
Garlic
I'm a
powder
little
is
stingy with garlic powder.
it's different.
I very
Yeah.
rarely use it. I almost always use fresh garlic.
Mm-hmm.
I would like to talk about bay leaves because we have talked about this on the podcast before and how what was the phrase? Well, how did we talk about them last time? Like that there are people who think that bay leaves are just like a mind game. Like I'm going to put a bay leaf in, but it adds no flavor. And I
Yeah.
actually didn't think that was true because I make this chicken soup and like white chicken chili, and it calls for a bay leaf,
Yeah.
and it tastes so much better when there's a bay leaf in it or 4.
Yeah.
Um,
I think you even cited like a article where they did this, where they tried different things with the bay leaf, without the bay
yeah.
leaf.
Well, I'm going to read this to you. Bay leaves are the flavor combination of eucalyptus, mint, lemon, and fresh cut grass. And there are 2 varieties, Turkish and Californian. Turkish variety has more subtle flavor. Bay leaves are always available dried, though fresh leaves can sometimes be found in the produce department. And they are used to flavor soup, stews, vegetables, and meats.
Okay, so this is the flavor profile is interesting because I specifically remember in that podcast, you were like, have you ever tried a bay leaf before? And I was like, no, why would I have done that? And you were like, I did it because I wanted to know what is the flavor that this is giving my thing. And you described it like a pine
Yes.
needle. You were like, it kind of has like a piney flavor, which I think is in
Yes.
line with like how you would describe some of these other.
Yeah, like if
flavors
eucalyptus
is like,
and fresh cut grass had a baby, it would taste like a pine tree.
I love it.
I don't know. I just feel
Uh,
validated in that bay leaves are useful and that they do add flavor and it's not a mind game. And they have a very particular flavor.
yeah, they do.
I love seasonings. I'm a high spice and seasoning person. Like we use them frequently and not in small amounts.
Yeah. I don't think that she necessarily mentioned this in here, but one thing that I do want to mention is that if you're buying ground spices at the grocery store, which I think pretty much everybody is, it is important to trade them out for fresh ones every now and again. I feel like there are things like nutmeg or cloves that you maybe only use when the holidays come around. You really don't want to use the like 5-year-old bottle of
Yeah.
nutmeg when it comes to like making your Christmas cookies or something because they do tend to lose their flavor and lose their potency. She does say
Around
that in
6
here that things
months.
lose their
Yeah.
flavor. Right. I think like the general rule of thumb is like 6 months, maybe a year. I know at our grocery store there is a section where they have like really small containers of specific spices. And so like if there's something that you only use once a year, I would just try to find the smallest possible
Yeah.
serving of it so that way it's going to taste the best in the things that you have and you're not going to be like, I don't even think we added nutmeg in here. Like there's no flavor to
Yes.
this,
Yeah.
you know?
Another suggestion for buying smaller amounts is to go to your like a local spice shop. I know that we have a local spice shop that's incredible, and so like I know that not everyone has that, but you can
Yeah.
buy smaller portions, teeny ounce bags of things versus larger
Yeah.
amounts.
And then at the spice shop, they're like a little
Yeah,
fresher too, I
yeah.
think.
And I would imagine that they rotate them out pretty quickly. They have very set. This is when these go. You can also another great option for our spice shop is that you can buy the refillable jar, and then the next time you go back in there, all you have to do is buy the bag to refill the jar, which I really like. So because I
Yeah.
hate throwing away all those little glass bottles when you're done with them, so I love the idea of just like
Right.
refilling. Oh, I was just gonna say that pepper is the world's most popular spice, which I found very interesting. And saffron is the world's most expensive spice. Depends on where you are in the
Yeah.
world, though. My niece just traveled to, oh, where was she? Like Croatia area? Where was she?
Hmm.
I can't remember the specific place she was, but she brought me back saffron from there. And it was shocking the price difference for where she bought
Oh,
it
I
in that
bet.
part of the
Yeah.
world. Yeah, it was amazing. And I've been using it. It's so fun to have fresh saffron.
Oh, yeah. I like that.
One other thing that I found really interesting that I didn't know is that the vanilla bean is a pod from an orchid flower.
I didn't know that either, which is
Yeah.
interesting because I have bought a brand of vanilla before that has like the flower,
Yes.
like a picture of a flower. And I did not make the connection that was the flower where the vanilla came from. I just thought like they have a pretty design.
Yeah, it's a very labor-intensive, expensive process. Cured for several months before they're sold. And so, it makes sense why vanilla extract costs so much. I didn't know that. And I feel silly that I didn't know that, but I love this information though.
Yeah. All right. I think we are going to wrap things up today. This is a little bit longer episode. So we're not going to include any dinner dilemmas today. I think we will release a shorter dinner dilemma episode maybe next week as just a fun little extra episode for the month. Before we go, though, Riley, do you want to talk about a recent recipe that you've had that you loved?
Okay, so we had some family in town and our grill, which I had based nearly every meal around, needed a new part. And so I had to call an audible on one of our meals before my husband could fix the smoker grill situation. So I ended up making this I put chicken breasts into a pan. I don't love baked chicken. Actually, don't love cooking chicken on the stovetop either. It makes such a big mess. But this was a really great kind of option when you don't have an outside option like the grill or smoker. And it's like a sauce that you make with half and half or heavy cream, depending on what you have. Chicken broth, roasted or sun-dried tomatoes, spinach, Parmesan. I think there's paprika in it, garlic. You mix it all together and you put the chicken into that sauce, put it in the oven for about an hour, and it is so good. And it has been and I've been temping it so the chicken's coming out right when it's done. It's not overcooked or dry or anything like that. But it cooks in that sauce and it comes together really beautifully. And it was really good. And it was a good kind of call in an audible for when I couldn't use the smoker.
Yeah, it does sound really good. I'm gonna have to find that recipe.
It's in my Plant-Eat account. What about you?
Well, we haven't eaten ours yet. It's what we'll have for dinner tonight. It's chicken tinga. We're gonna have it in
Yeah,
tacos. I think I've made this for you before,
you have.
actually. So I'm doing something different today, though. I'm just cooking a whole chicken. So I make the chicken tinga in a crock pot. Usually it's just either chicken breasts or chicken thighs. But with the price of groceries right now, it's like we're just gonna buy the whole chicken because I can buy a whole chicken for $8 and chicken breast for like $12, you know? So I'm actually feeling kind of nervous about it,
Why?
which is like a little silly, but because usually when I make a recipe like this, it's like there's no bones, there's no skin. So like when it's ready, you just shred it up and all of the sauce and everything is already cooked in with it. And so it's really simple. And so now like I put all of the things in the crock pot for the sauce and I also put the whole chicken in there. And so at some point, the thing that I'm nervous about is I don't know at what point I do this process of like I have to take the whole chicken out and I have to take the skin off and I have to debone it and put the meat back in. So I'm just like, I'm not sure exactly what this is going to look like because I've never done it with a whole chicken before.
Do you have a meat thermometer?
Yeah.
Okay, so temp it in multiple places, and I wouldn't shred it or do any of those processes until it's all totally done.
Well, sure. I just wasn't sure if I should wait until it's like literally falling off the bone
Mm,
or if I should do it when it's like just cooked
yeah.
and then do it at that point and then let everything still continue to like mingle in the pot. Get to know each other in the pot.
Who said that? Somebody says that.
It's Kevin off at The Office.
Oh, yeah. Somebody says that. Yeah. Yeah. That's awesome. Yeah, that's a good question. I think I might let it go till it's falling apart, until it kind of like till you can kind of shred it off of the bone already. But I
That's
think
what
it's
I
going to
was
be
thinking.
better than normal because I bet all those extra flavors and juices and things like that are going to give it a lot of extra flavor.
I hope so. I mean, it's almost like making like meat stock
Yeah,
with the tinga sauce. So I think
absolutely.
I'm hoping it's gonna be really good.
Yeah, sounds great.
Alrighty, well, thank you for joining us for another book club breakdown episode of Grocery Shopping Secrets. We're gonna have our Dinner Dilemmas episode come out next week, and we will be talking about the book again in 2 weeks. So we'll see you then.